Hi, I'm Gabriel and this is Learning English Path. And in this lesson, I'm going to teach you why you should read English language fiction. Fiction, in whatever language you're reading it in, stimulates your mind. It activates your mind. So, especially if you are reading something in English, right? In your second language, or maybe your third language. If you're reading something in a language that is not your native language, then your mind is already going to be pushing itself a little bit. But you add the fact that it's fiction, and you start to light up your imaginative parts of your brain, right? You start to activate those mirror neurons, which are parts of your mind that project yourself, and you enter into a state of empathy with the characters that you are reading about. So you read fiction and your mind starts to turn, right? And you want to take advantage of the fact that your mind is lighting up in all of these ways. Your imagination is turned on. And you do that by learning at the same time, learning English. And you'll remember the words, you'll remember the new vocabulary a lot better if you're enjoying the story, if you are engaged in a story where you might even see yourself. You can empathize with the characters in the story, and you are imagining the story very vividly with a clear picture in your head, right? You'll remember the words a lot better. You might remember the grammar a lot better, right? And the expressions and the idioms, of course. And you will return to that book if you like it. And you'll return to it in the English language, right? You're returning to the English language not to study it. You're not going back to study and making that a thing. You're going back because you enjoy the story. You want to find out what happens next in this story, in this fictional story, because that's where your imagination is. And you have it in English. So now, if you want to find out what's next, you have to read it in English. So you better get learning, right? So it's a motivating factor. And suddenly you're learning English without studying being the focus. Instead, the focus is knowing what happens next in this story, right? And you will start to think in English because it's a habit. You will start to think in English when you're not reading the book, right? Let's say you read this book an hour a day, or even just half an hour a day. Then when you're out doing your own thing, maybe that story will come to you again. You'll start thinking about that story. Oh yeah, I wonder what happens next in that story. And you'll think about the story in the English language because that's how you were reading it. And then you'll start to think in the English language. Your mind will start to carry on thinking, imagining things in the English language. And thinking in English is one of the most important habits that you can develop in order to improve your English. Because when you think in the English language, you don't have to push yourself to translate anymore when you're having a conversation, right? It's automatic, it's habitual. Reading in fiction expands your vocabulary. It will expand your vocabulary. I recommend that you keep a dictionary next to you as you read the fictional story, so that when you come across a word or many words that you don't know, you can look it up, right? You can look it up, and if that word returns again and again, then you'll start to learn those words very easily. And you will start to get new words and expressions that you enjoy, right? Words, new favorite words, perhaps. And also about grammar. It is a passive way of learning grammar also, as long as it's an appropriate level for you. So don't be trying to read something like War and Peace if you're still just a lower intermediate level English learner, right? And if most of the words you're learning are new, then you might not know when a verb is being used instead of a noun, right? You might be a little bit confused about that. If you're a beginner English level or a lower level intermediate learner and you're trying to read something way too difficult, then it can get confusing because you might not know a lot of the words, and so you might not really understand what's happening in the book, and you might think that one thing is happening when in fact something else is happening, and then that loses the purpose of doing this exercise, right? So also about grammar, be on the safe side and learn. If you're going to try to absorb the grammar, do it from the narration. Don't do it from the dialogue, because the characters in the dialogue, they might not be using correct grammar. And it's maybe more authentic. It could be, unless you're reading a fantasy novel or something, right? It could be more authentic the way the characters speak. However, if you're still trying to understand the grammar rules, then don't take what the characters say as an accurate grammar lesson, right? Because English speakers, if you want to watch my videos on elliptical sentences, we use ellipses all the time. We use a lot of expressions, and you might not know when someone is using an expression. You might think that that's grammar, right? A normal vocabulary words with grammar. You might not realize it's an idiom. And also, as far as grammar goes, and this goes for narration and dialogue, don't pick, if you're going to try to learn grammar in a fiction book, don't pick out parts of sentences and use them as if they were grammar rules, because they may be subordinate clauses. They may not be the main clause, and only the main clause can be a full sentence. A subordinate clause is never a full sentence because it depends on the main clause. So you might have a sentence that is relative that uses a clause like Gabriel was reading the book, comma, which was in his hands as he spoke, full stop, right? I just completely made that up. But that second part would not be a main clause. So if you tried to select that part and make it a full sentence, it would be completely wrong, right? So when you're reading, be mindful of this and make sure you focus on full sentences and be aware as to whether or not it is something that would be grammatically accurate. And the last thing, just make sure that it's the right book for you. Pick something that you're interested in. Don't try and force yourself to read science fiction if you are only interested in crime novels, right? Because the whole point is that you're supposed to be engaged and thinking about this story, okay? If you do that, it's a great way to just start the habit of thinking in English. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure you click that bell so that you know when I publish a new free lesson here on YouTube. And if you want to learn English with songs, then don't forget to click the link in the description to get my free PDF guide to 101 songs to learn English. I have hundreds of exercises for you to study English, English grammar, English vocabulary, English idioms, practice your English listening, and even your speaking while listening to the very best songs to study English with. All right. And when you get it, then you also get my weekly email with 5 words of the week, where I teach you another 5 words every single week so that you continue to take your English language learning to that next level. All right, my friend, I'm Gabriel Wallace. Keep learning and keep going.